the street. I don't think they know the full story. If someone can speak about three issues, we were presented this to Henry. The reason why this is important to us is we were presented by them a while ago, and they basically said we have sewage in the streets, we have DEP complaints. These are citations we need to address, and it is at the top of the list. So there was the first question that the people on the street might not remember is this is not in our watershed, and we're basically agreeing because we're being directed by DEP to accept it into our watershed. It could have gone a whole different way if we had asked Union Township for a plan. They had agreed to the plan. We could have got engineers immediately working on the best plan for it. We could have done this a whole bunch of different ways. So the first one is if someone can speak about the original complaint from DEP that kind of forced us into this outside of our watershed issue. The second is that amongst all of this, we were discovering that Union Township, behind our backs, was trying to set up their own authority for this type of water or this type of sewage coming into our system. We understand that there's other parts of their township area that they're going to do their own sewage authority, but they wanted to also control this one that was going to be put into our system, charging their customers, in control of the line. That right there created a big issue for us that these people in the room might not know. I truly think this could have gone a lot differently if it was if we didn't have so many issues with Union Township. I don't know if anybody wants to speak about that before we make our vote.
I would just say I don't want to rehash whole things. Let's move forward. I think we've got the mediation and the transcript, and we ought to just vote on what we believe is the truth. Point of clarity, we weren't ordered by DEP to service this area. It wasn't clear to us that it was in the watershed. It's not in the watershed, but it's technically in our service area. And what I can tell you is way back in 1970, the same question came up, is it in our service area, in our watershed? And the answer back then was no, and there was actually Ryan that took a close look at the maps and realized that, yeah, it's not in our watershed, but it's technically in our service area, and therefore they can connect. So that's kind of what it is.
This is just one quick comment. I sat on the Board of Supervisors back around when the West Elizabeth Sanitary Authority issue was all going on, and we were putting sewage in for El Reno. Originally, Kim Gales had designed a plan that was supposed to take all of that water that you were getting there, all of that water coming down, and was supposed to pass along Logs Run Road to go to connect to Jefferson's pipeline at the far end. That's how it was originally designed, and that's how everybody proceeded from that point forward. So that's been 18 years was the operating time period that we had on that. Nothing ever moved forward on that because of expense. Instead of just signing a developer's agreement and letting you guys go ahead and do things the way they are supposed to be done in the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority, Union Township decided on their own they were going to use their engineers at their expense, their attorneys. And if you look at it and go back on the time period, if they just signed the agreement before, we'd probably be done.
Maybe.
One other question, maybe, before we vote. When it was mentioned some years ago, the people were asking about getting sewage. They were told, I was told, that they're not in our watershed. The same thing with Mingo Circle, not in our watershed. Well, I don't want DEP coming down here mandating us like they did up at Mingo Circle. You have to get this done, quote unquote. You know, the less involvement we have with those people, I think the better off everybody is. But I just wanted to make the record clear.
I appreciate that.
It was DEP that mandated you will get those people sewage.
For Mingo, not for.
Right. But then they applied for the grant. They got the grant to use solely for that particular project, those 19 or 20 homes. And then the rest, you guys know more about it than I do, because you were all the hearings.
I can speak for myself. I really want this project to go forward. I think it's the right thing to do. I think that lift station's the right thing to do. And let's let the board in two sides mediate. Any more comment from the public?
I have one comment.
Yes, ma'am.
So, hypothetically, if board members were told that there was no more development that could happen in that watershed, and that grinder pumps can't be added onto, but there's nowhere to add on to over there anyway. It's to the tip of the watershed. To make a decision, would that be false information? Like, if making a decision between grinder pumps and a lift station, if somebody was told that the grinder pumps were the way to go because there is no more development in that watershed, would that be false? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like now I'm hearing Lobs Run Road and I'm hearing all of this
But
other.
I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that the grinder pumps, you know, you have a pump in each of the 19 homes. Could you add more to that line?
In theory, you potentially could, yes. And, you know, Mr. Rugby, if I may kind of jump in here a little bit. To your point, ma'am, you know, it is on the leeward side of what is defined in the PCSA 537 plan as the PCSA plan. It is towards the edge. Is there some additional property out there that could potentially develop? Probably some, probably not a lot.
Could I answer that?
Yeah.
Right behind every house on Filio Roma Road is 8 acres that belongs to a friend of mine that's for sale.
Okay, some more, you could build a bunch of homes.
Behind every one of them, behind all the property behind Union Township Municipal Building, the whole way down, it's for sale.
So, but you could add more, I guess.
I would say
Like
that
the
your ability to add more to a low pressure system is probably slightly more limited than it would be for.
Yeah, and the very first that we heard of this project is when Mr. Harshman, I think it was October of 19, came here and gave a presentation and looked at the two options, and it was really just a cost, and one was $150,000 or $200,000 more than the other.
But it wasn't necessarily that because there's no more development. that
That's not how it was
happened.
presented.
That's not the reason.
That's how it was presented to us, citizens.
Okay.
That's exactly how it was presented. It was misinformed. Me personally, I know the councilmen from Union Township, nothing against you guys. I think Harshman Group is a joke. I've dealt with engineering firms my entire life. My dad was a commissioner over at Scott Township my entire life. I've personally known a lot of engineers. I've dealt with them for work. And they're the biggest Mickey Mouse organization I've ever seen in my life.
Is there, they're telling us there's raw sewage and a health hazard. Is there raw sewage all over the place?
I can't tell you 100% sure, but we're at the end of it, our property. There's no raw sewage going over the property. It is 5 springs at the top of the properties right there, leading down to there. But across the street by Nike site, there is something there. I don't know. I did not take a sample and go down to the sewage station and get it tested or anything. I don't know how any documentation of it being tested, but if you ever walk through a swamp in your life, you walk through a swamp, it smells like raw sewage. It's rotting plant matter. I don't know if there's a spring underground over there. It's just over time, all the rotten, it's pushing it up. I don't know.
Well, I heard, hang on.
I concur with this gentleman, because I went over the day that they were digging that, I think I was teasing your kids, they got a
Yeah.
swimming pool, right?
Yeah.
And and it had to be part of the system, because when did, last time they used rivets on galvanized pipe? Pipes this big around, you know?
Yeah, like I said, I mean,
It's gotta be, I mean,
the
Larry, you
pipe,
oughta know, you probably put that in.
it's a steel pipe.
1842.
But I got pictures of that pipe with rivets bonding the pipe together, and I haven't.
And I think what you said is consistent with Ryan. You said you talked to Mr. Harshman, and he said when they dug that hole, it was a pipe.
Larry was on the board.
And I think a lot of that water's coming underneath the road.
It's an old PennDOT pipe that was abandoned. But rotting plant matter will find its way in there. I don't think it's raw sewage.
Hey, good. The night that he came down, I went down, and there was.
Okay. Any other comment from board members or the public? Yes, ma'am.
I've never seen it. I got cameras pointing there.
I just wondered when Mr. Bonato was gonna be in touch with, Judge Lucas.
Well, the first step is we need to vote on this, whether we're gonna approve the mediation. If it is, then we need to talk about what our next steps are.
Done, so you can put a new driveway. I don't
Okay,
trust-
so I'm gonna need a motion from someone to approve the mediation.